But I don't think I'm alone in that. That sometimes when someone we care about or someone's in our physical space and they're acting a bit short, if we don't have a culture or a dialogue that exists around naming things that are uncomfortable, my first go-to will be I messed up. I've done something wrong. And
I
so if my partner comes home and says, I've had a long day, I just want to chill out, I don't have the brain space for anything, I then know what to do with that. But if they don't
Yes.
say anything and they're like a little bit short or distracted, and I'm like, oh, but we're watching the next episode of Game of Thrones, and I'm like, why aren't you watching? Or like, I'll make it worse probably, or I'll be like,
Yes.
well, stuff you, I don't need this, and I'll go do my own thing. And so,
Hi, I'm Dr. Jodi Richardson, and this is Well, Hello Anxiety. In a world that often moves too fast, we're here to pause, breathe, and understand anxiety together. Each episode will explore practical strategies, share honest conversations, and uncover the science behind anxiety and well-being, all while creating a space where it's okay to not be okay. Let's continue this journey together. I imagine that any parent listening today is going to be able to relate to this conversation. I am so delighted to be talking with Marie Vakakis once again. She is a guest that you all love listening to. She's joined me many times on the podcast. I think I've lost count. So I'll introduce Marie in a moment. But we're going to be talking today about when we are running on empty, or we're feeling anxious, we're feeling overwhelmed, and we are trying to parent and support our children no matter what age. How do we do it? How do we look after ourselves? How do we still parent well? What do we say? How much do we share? This is something that I think is really important for us to talk about. So, Marie, a very warm welcome back to the podcast. It's so lovely to have you back.
it's really nice to be back here and have another conversation about, I guess, mental health and anxiety and relationships and all of it mixed up into one.
It is all mixed up into one, isn't it? All interrelated. And before we get going, can you tell our listeners a little bit about or more than a little bit about, all about your work and how you support couples and families through the Therapy Hub, so they have, for those that haven't had the pleasure of hearing us talk here on the podcast, they can learn a little bit about you and the wonderful work you do.
Absolutely. I get a little bit excited with all the things that I do, so I'll try and contain it. But okay. I'm an accredited mental health social worker and couples and family therapist. And I got into family therapy through actually working with adolescents. So I worked a lot in schools and with teenagers, and I was like, I love teenagers. They're amazing. And they came with parents, and I was like, I don't know what to do with parents. And so I went and studied my Master's of Family Therapy. And then through that, I really fell, I guess, in love with couples therapy as one of the early intervention areas of that whole space of mental health and relationships. And now I do a combination of all of it. So I run a private practice in Footscray in Melbourne called the Therapy Hub, where we offer, it's a team of us that offer counselling and psychology, couples therapy, family therapy. And I also have the podcast, This Complex Life, which has conversations similar to what we've had. We've had a couple on my podcast as well, which are more sort of thoughtful, allow for nuance, and kind of unpack and sort of rumble with different topics and conversations. And then I have another podcast called Inside Social Work, which is to support other therapists and other mental health professionals to do this kind of work as well, to work in the mental health wellbeing sort of therapy space. So I love learning and I love educating, and I have found a way to kind of do it all in one.
Yes.
Which can get a little bit overwhelming at times. So I'm sure I can share bits of that as we go through as well.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you so much. And a question that listeners today might have on their minds is, are you still taking clients? Do you have room for new clients through in-person or telehealth at the Therapy Hub?
As a team, we do.
Yes.
My caseload fluctuates. So at the moment, I'm about to go on a couple of weeks of leave. So things will get pushed out till probably November, December. But there's always somebody who's got some availability, and we're recruiting for new team members at the moment. So we can continue to grow and expand.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. I love how much you give back, and you are always learning, and our conversations have been really rich and so supportive for listeners. So When it comes to parents, so funny the way you said that you loved working with teenagers, and I think I agree, teenagers are awesome and they come with parents. And hang on a second, this is a piece of the puzzle that I'd like to be more equipped to work with. That it's so hard for parents, isn't it, trying, especially if a parent is struggling with their mental health. What's the first thing you'd like any parent listening to know when it comes to, gosh, they are relating to this idea, this topic, and feeling like, gosh, I feel like I'm either wrecking my kids' mental health, I'm going to have some sort of long-term impact on their future, feeling really like they're struggling, maybe feeling guilty, and just feeling kind of like at a bit of a loss. What's the first thing that you might say to a parent listening, maybe to bring a little bit of hope into the conversation first up?
I think the thing I notice most with, I guess across the board, is we lack a lot of self-compassion. So people are very good at giving other people permission or advice to reflect on how much they've tried, or to take a break, or to rest. And their internal dialogue, their own self-critic or inner critic, is ruthless. And so my first step would be some self-compassion, that you are enough, you're doing your best. It doesn't mean that you might not want to do different or improve something, but nothing's ever been achieved by that inner critic kind of writing you every day. So I would say self-compassion.
Could you tell any listeners who haven't practiced self-compassion before what might be a way for them to think about caring more for themselves and speaking to themselves more kindly?
I think the one example I use with clients is, picture someone that you adore. Maybe you've got a daughter, a niece, a nephew, or someone that, picture a cute little 3 or 4-year-old. And if you wouldn't say it out loud to them, then you probably shouldn't be saying it to yourself. So if they're, learning how to kind of use cutlery and they knock over a glass, you're not going to say that, you're a stupid little so-and-so, how dare you be so clumsy. You'd be like, oh, that's okay, you're learning. You pick up the glass, or you might have given them a plastic cup and you just keep going. So think about that voice, and would you say it out loud to somebody else? And that's kind of the easiest way to get started with this sort of self-compassion practice.
I really love that we've started there, and it's so calming, isn't it? It's such a balm, I think, for an anxious mind when you can just stop and cut yourself a bit of a break. And, as parents, honestly, like thinking today and talking to you today, I just sort of think about all the things. Like I'm struggling a little bit at the moment, Marie, I'll be honest with you. And I don't normally that's not normally how I feel when I'm recording an episode. And I, at the moment, am sort of in the thick of this. Like, how do I look after myself? Like, my dad's health is really declining quite fast, and it's having a big impact on my mum. And I've been doing lots of brilliant, had lots of brilliant connections and opportunities presenting lately, and I'm feeling a bit behind in some of the things I need to catch up on, and just feeling a little bit in struggle town myself. And, one of the things that I know as a person living with anxiety is I used to sort of feel like when I was, I've learned a lot myself about how to manage my emotions and support my kids and help them to understand what's happening for me. For the parent that's listening who's feeling like, oh, yes, Jodi, I can relate, I'm struggling a bit too, and have been kind of masking how they're feeling and kind of trying to put on that happy face for the family and deal with everything else that's going on in their life kind of in their own time. How do you see that kind of play out when you see parents kind of operating in that way? And what are the fears around kind of masking and not showing that you might be having a bit of a rough time yourself?
I see it in a number of different extremes. And I mean, what you're going through is a lot, right? That sounds like that sandwich generation of looking after aging parents and having children and being caught in the middle with your own life, hobbies, interests, partner, friends, career, it all happening at once. I mean, that's like a melting pot of it's just chaotic and stressful, and life gets busy and hectic, and there's grief and loss and sadness. And I think maybe one of the things we don't talk about enough is that it happens, that pain happens, that suffering happens, that worry happens. And so we don't normalize some of those natural, normal life things that happen. And so we can then feel like we're doing something wrong, or that we should be in more control, or that we can prevent suffering, or we can, avoid it or detach from it or distract it. And I think over the long term, that makes things worse. And so there is a level of acceptance, and being a sort of ACT practitioner, it's one of the therapies I like to practice. And I know you've done a lot of ACT work as well. It's really in naming that and noticing that and sitting with it. And then from there, we can do something. So with young people, they often are the ones that end up in the therapy room because the parents, again, are doing everything for everybody else.
Yes.
And maybe not able to justify or would prioritize whatever money's left over in the budget for their kids and not for themselves. And so I think that's really tricky, and I don't know what the biggest solution is for that. And some people maybe struggle to set boundaries or say no, ask for help. And I think that can be a really negative cycle. So I think it is starting to talk about it with a few trusted people, with a partner, with a professional, and naming it and just saying, even if they are the ones that jump into problem solve, which if I had $1 for every time I said, please don't try to fix it.
Yes.
Just saying, I just want to vent right now. I need to get off my chest all this stuff and start having those conversations. It does hurt less when we're carrying it with other people.
It's funny, driving into the studio today, I was just in total I need to distract myself mode. And I made so many phone calls in my car. Nobody answered. I'm like, oh, this is a sign. And I was aware of what I was doing. And the moment that I like distraction, obviously I couldn't find a distraction. I was listening to the news, and that just often makes you feel a little bit worse. But I realised that what you've just said, it's, life does throw so many curveballs, and it's not even just the curveballs. Sometimes just day-to-day life can be hard, and I know that there are a lot of families, there are families. I mean, here in Victoria, we've got a absolutely unprecedented crime wave and a lot of anxiety and fear around the community. There's financial stress, and not to mention, like you were saying before, just the day-to-day challenges of working and staying connected and looking after ourselves and looking after other people. This idea of noticing it and naming it, and for the parent who's listening who's feeling like it's just better if I just keep moving, can you talk a little bit more about, when we do give ourselves the opportunity to sit with it, the benefits that can come as opposed to the distraction, the pretending it's not happening, the busyness, and just kind of like ignoring what we're feeling, that comes at quite a cost, doesn't it?
It does. And I have so much compassion for people who are in that position. Often it's what they were role modeled as well. And so if they witness their parents suck it up, pull up their socks, just get on with it, work really hard. I mean, my family, a migrant family, I know a lot of people in similar positions where they worked, they got on with it. Anything that was sort of self-reflective was like eye-rolled navel gazing. It wasn't regarded very positively. And so that message gets passed on. So there is something in us sometimes that can make it hard if we have these narratives or these stories of, I should be able to, I should just, or why can't I just, all of these sort of beliefs that make it hard. And sometimes people need permission. I had a friend the other day have a really bad patch at work, and it wasn't until her boss said, go on stress leave, you're not coming back, I'm forcing you to go home and rest. She's like, I wouldn't have done it, but I'm so glad I have that chance now. Like, we sometimes need someone else to step in and push us to that decision. And I think it's really sad where I have a lot of mums in particular sort of say, sometimes I just wish I had a little bit, was lightly hit by a car so that I could be in hospital just long enough to rest, someone else bring me food and be taken care of. And they're like, isn't that an awful thought? I'm like, I can see why what you're craving is being looked after, is having the burden of day-to-day stuff being removed, being tended to and forced to rest.
Yes.
And so I don't know exactly what the solution is, but starting to have these conversations is one step towards that because our system, our way we work, the way we do community or not, that's a big ship to turn the other direction. I don't think we're doing that very well. And it's creating these silos where people feel like they have to do it all on their own.
Oh, and it is. And it just, what you just shared, I can personally relate to the idea that just going into hospital for a few days is, and we know that when we enact, we talk about the mind being a problem solver and a storyteller, and the mind is like, you've got a problem here and this is a way to solve it. And I identified, and I was sharing actually in a presentation that I delivered on Monday. Today we're recording on a Thursday, and I shared that when this is prior to kids, but I was completely burnt out. I was finishing my honours degree. I was nursing a very elderly cat who really hadn't remembered life without, and I had to go and do this presentation, Marie. I had to go and present to all of my peers and all of the supervisors, and it really, my scholarship for a PhD was really going to be riding on the outcome of this huge presentation. The stress was just too much, and I was walking the dogs, and there was a car coming, and I didn't want to hurt myself. I didn't want to be severely injured or harmed. It wasn't that type of thinking, but it was just, if my foot just got a little bit like lightly run over, or, they'll have a good reason to say, I can't do this anymore. And everybody would understand that, there was a reason I wasn't sort of showing up and doing all the things that I needed to do. And I've heard Dr. Christy Goodwin talk about women who are thinking about, a few days in hospital being a break. I have spoken to people because it's not easy to talk about, because it's a little bit hard for people to understand. But, if you've had thoughts like that, it's probably a sign that you are in need of some support around you. Is this something that you're hearing people share when they're, either friends having a chat with you or people coming to see you as clients?
As clients, we've got to kind of pull it out, because to say it out loud, I think, feels very shameful. It's like, well, what am I saying if I need this? Or it's, I'm just being ridiculous. I have so much I should be grateful for or happy for. But it's like what you said, it would give me either an excuse or a reason or legitimize my need for rest.
Yeah.
Or it's to be looked after. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes with anxiety, decision fatigue is very real. And so when you're picturing that hospital stay, someone's like, I get to choose between 2 bits of food, or even, I don't even get to, it gets brought to me. It's one decision done.
Yes.
It's all of those moments are taken away, all of that decision making, all that, you're looked after, you're cared for, people will come, they'll give flowers or check in if you're okay. Yeah. But we don't do the same with mental health. When somebody has an inpatient admission, we don't have the same support that goes around that. And whenever I run training like mental health first aid, and we start comparing someone's response to a physical illness versus mental ill health, it's very different. And so we don't know how to sometimes support what we can't see.
Yes. And we often don't know how to ask for what we need. Equally, if you were on crutches and stumbling around, that if your mental health is suffering, and, from a personal point of view, like having this conversation with you now, I sort of think, well, what do I need, and how can I give myself more of that in the coming days and weeks? Or how can I set myself up to cope with inevitably what's going to probably get harder, not easier, in some aspects of my life? I know in my home, there was a time, Marie, where I didn't use the word anxiety, because I thought, if I use this word anxiety, and this is the irrational, illogical, anxious brain, in fun form, thinking as a new parent when I was so highly anxious, if I just never use that term, my kids will never have a challenge with it like I do. And of course, now in our home, we talk about feelings and emotions, and I even said to one of my kids the other day, there was an experience that was disappointing, and I kind of started a conversation, and this child of mine said, "It's okay, I know how to process my emotions, Mum." And I thought, that is just priceless. But, you know, I guess I have the expertise and the experience, and over time I've been able to share, and even my daughter last night, I mean, gosh, Marie, can I just tell you, we were baking together. I was baking and happily baking, which was a nice therapeutic thing for me to do. And my daughter sort of said, "I'll come in and give you a hand." And I'm like, "Oh, that's fun. Like, that'll be great." She's 15. We haven't baked together in a while. But as certain things were happening with this baking process, lemon cake we were making, we nearly had pips in the batter and all sorts of things were happening. And she's like, "Are you all right, Mum? Are you a little bit anxious?" And she doesn't say it in a way to be smart. She's just like, "Are you okay?" Because I was getting a little bit short and a little bit irritable. And so over time in my home, I've shared and talked, and I can share that I'm not feeling, I'll say sometimes I'm just not feeling myself, or I'm feeling a bit flat, or I'm feeling anxious, and I'll work to support myself, but they understand that they're not responsible, that if I'm acting in a way that isn't sort of normal for me, or not in my warm, loving, sort of bright and bubbly self, that they understand. And, you know, sometimes in a home where you haven't learned to do that, or built up to those kinds of conversations, you can be a bit stuck, can't you? Because some parents feel like, well, I have to just pretend it's not happening, and usually people can tell something's not right, or it spills over. And then there can be that guilt about, well, you know, how am I impacting my kids? Can you speak to that, and kind of what you might say to parents who are kind of like, yes, I'm in one camp or the other, or I go between both, so that we can talk about kind of how as parents we can build the comfortability, sharing more about how we're going, and maybe some of the things parents might be able to say if they do want to sort of share a bit about how they're going without sort of oversharing and putting too much on the kids.
I mean, what a tricky job description, right? You're trying to be yourself and educate, and you've got all of this stuff happening all at once. One of the things I was chatting to someone recently about was this idea of "I'm fine," and they knew that person that was, like, "How are you?" And they're like, "I'm fine." And like, I know they're not fine, but I'm taking the "I'm not fine" as I don't want to talk. And I was trying to challenge that and saying, well, how could we change that? What would be different if when they ask you, you said, "I'm not okay. I actually have a lot on my mind, and I'd like to just do this activity quietly if that's okay." So actually naming it and then saying what you want, instead of saying "I'm fine," because you're not fine and people know you're not fine and they don't know how to help, but you just want some quiet time. So maybe practicing or having some go-to sentences around, "I've got a lot on my plate, I'm a little bit distracted, and I'm happy just to sit here quietly," or "I actually do have a lot on my mind and I just need some rest time." So actually, instead of just saying "I'm fine" as the "I don't want to talk about it," saying "I do have things on and I don't feel like talking about it right now," like naming that, that's already giving you, it's you practicing and you setting a boundary of, this is how I feel, this is what I need. And it's role modeling that for them, and for them to have that language as well. So, because often, I mean, I don't know about you, but the first thing I think is, oh my God, what have I done wrong?
Yes.
If somebody's acting a bit snippy or short, like let's say if it was you today, and I'd be like, oh, have I disappointed Jodi? Was I a few minutes late? Did I sound rude in my last email? Like, that's my stuff that will come up.
Yeah.
But I don't think I'm alone in that. That sometimes when someone we care about, or someone's in our physical space and they're acting a bit short, if we don't have a culture or a dialogue that exists around naming things that are uncomfortable, my first go-to will be, I messed up. I've done something wrong. And so if my partner comes home and says, "I've had a long day, I just want to chill out, I don't have the brain space for anything," I then know what to do with that. Yes. But if they don't say anything and they're like a little bit short or distracted, and I'm like, "Oh, but we're watching the next episode of Game of Thrones," and I'm like, "Why aren't you watching?" Or like, I'll make it worse probably.
Yes.
Or I'll be like, "Well, stuff you, I don't need this," and I'll go do my own thing. And so that can then cause more stress and more chaos, or more fracturing or ruptures. And then before you know it, it becomes a mess.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for saying that out loud, because that is the story of my life. And I think that other people, especially when anxiety is in the mix, we feel responsible for how other people are feeling. And Marie, honestly, and it's our stuff, isn't it? And of course we know that when we get anxious, we become inflexible in our thinking and inaccurate in our thinking, and that we can really make it about us. Where I love those things that I see online sometimes. It's like, it's really not about you. Nobody's spending that much time thinking about you, and I think that's so relatable. And what you've just said is so true. Something happened at home. I was a month or so ago, and I was because most of the time I am able to, as a parent, I'm able to sort of let everyone know, look, I'm not feeling great, I'll call it out. It's nothing to do with you, because that was me as a kid growing up with an anxious mum. I always felt responsible, and so I like to say to my kids, look, it's nothing to do with you. It's just my stuff at the moment. And so, and of course I know it will pass, but sometimes I just get into a space where I think that I've held it. Sometimes I do pretend I'm okay, and it's clear as a bell that to everyone around me that I'm not. And I remember being in the kitchen, and everyone else was sitting down to dinner, and we all sit. If we sit down to dinner as a family of 4, there's no phones at the table. Nobody answers a call, and everybody eats at the same time. Whereas they were eating, and I was just like doing dishes and just like kind of just, I'm okay, I'm fine, I'm just getting a few things done. And Peter just said, right, Jodi, okay, it is clear to all of us that you are not okay. What do you need? How about you just go take some time for yourself, leave us here, we'll take care of everything. And I just literally, went into another room and realised I burst into tears, because I was so, it was such hard work, isn't it? Trying to deal with the stuff we're dealing with, and, try to keep in my mind, I was like, I just don't want to bring everyone down with what's going on with me at the moment. But of course, it just, like you say, it can make such a mess. And so that language that you've shared, I think, is really powerful, just to say, hey, no, I'm not okay at the moment. I don't really feel like talking about it, but I am going to take myself off. If you need to remove yourself from the room. How might a parent who's listening, who this is in a family environment where there's never been any talk of emotions, and a parent listening is feeling like, hey, you know what? I want to make some changes, but I need a little bit of convincing that this is a really sort of, this is worth the effort of making change. Can you tell us maybe some of the benefits of being a little bit more open with how we're going if we are struggling, and how it's actually going to make a positive difference in our homes, rather than thinking, well, if I say I'm not okay, I'm going to have a negative impact on those people around me?
It's like planting seeds, and so some of those conversations get watered and it grows over time. It normalizes that language, and it makes it okay for them to say it too. So if we don't think about your childhood, there are topics that were avoided on purpose, and we can think of a few that were never talked about. Now, that implies a message that it's not okay to talk about that. And so when you start to share a little bit about what's happening for you, and I take my job, for example, I can't share details of clients with people, and yet I can still say, I'm feeling really spent or drained, or, I had a difficult story that was hard to hear, and I'm feeling a lot of grief. I don't have to share the details. I can just say, I'm feeling these things, and they're just there. And I'm not saying it in a way that's implying I need the other person to fix it. I'm not using it as a way to try and bring connection in a false way, like, oh, I've had such a bad day, why aren't you helping me? And so it can just be left hanging there as, yeah, I've got a lot on. I'll push through because I've got a few things I need to do, and that's just what's happening for me. Yeah. And so some teenagers, I can just picture them sort of looking like, what? What's changed? What have you done with my parent? And they might like notice and kind of see where they can poke and whatever. But if there's genuine emotion, whenever I've had family therapy sessions and someone who's normally quite stoic and they think they're doing a good job by being stoic, I have to hold it all together, I need to be positive. When they show emotion, it gives so much more permission for the other people to do that as well. And it builds intimacy. Seeing somebody who is vulnerable creates connection. And I know that all the things we're saying, it takes vulnerability. It's very vulnerable to say, I'm not doing okay, and then I need something, because I think we're scared that person will say no, that we won't get it, that they'll laugh at us. And so we shut down, and then we rob them of the opportunity to connect with us and give us what we need, and we rob ourselves of the chance to receive what we need, even if what we need is space.
Yes.
And it could be a half-hour shower, a walk, fend for yourselves, have toast for dinner. I've got to read a book. It's because if we don't name it, what I see over time is resentment can build up, and the behaviors that we use to try and cope or distract don't invite connection. They actually push people away. So someone might be scrolling endlessly on their phone. They might not even know that they're anxious or stressed, but that phone, that distraction is disconnecting them from their partner or from their kids. Those people are left feeling left out. My mum, dad, brother, whoever's not paying attention to me, they might get snarky, then you get more overwhelmed. And so we're really misattuned, and we miss those opportunities for connection. So naming the feeling and sharing what you need, that can go such a long way. And if you do that regularly over time, it builds a whole new dialogue in your family or in your community around feelings and emotions, and it really does build intimacy. And I think it builds trust as well, because people don't have to second guess themselves of what's happening. Have I done something wrong? What do they need? They kind of know.
What you have just shared is going to bring families closer if parents listening can start to plant those little seeds, just like you said, about just testing the waters, dipping your toe in the water, and instead of next time that you maybe walk in the door and you've had a difficult day, and just doing the I'm fine, everything's okay kind of that might be the normal way that you have managed and moved on through the afternoon. Just to try on for size one of the statements that Marie just shared around maybe just, it's been a bit of a tough day, I'm struggling a little bit, but I'll be all right, or however, or I'll move through it. That's something I often say, Marie, is I know that I'll get through it, because I think it's always nice, isn't it, for us to kind of, part of the seed planting is to note and acknowledge that whilst we might be in the middle of something now, we do move through these emotions, and they're not there with us forever. And there's just so much that we can do to role model for our kids. But fundamentally, when we can talk a little bit about it, say what we need, that alone it's a bit like if we've got all these suitcases, all this baggage, it's a bit like putting down a couple of bags, isn't it? Just letting it go for a moment, and just the relief that often comes with just sitting with an emotion as well and identifying it for ourselves can be quite palpable, even though it feels a little bit frightening. What just to finish off, what might you say to someone who is listening, who's thinking, well, gosh, I've heard a lot of conversations like this on Well Hello Anxiety, and I invite you as a listener to listen to Marie's podcast or podcasts as well, but is thinking, well, it feels frightening to acknowledge to myself that I'm having a particular feeling, because I've always just kind of shut it down. What might you say to someone who's sort of toying with the idea of maybe approaching things a little bit differently, just as sort of as a last question, although this could be a whole podcast episode, so good luck with this one.
Yeah, I think it definitely can be. I would maybe say take a couple of moments to pause between the transition. So if the transition is from, if your mornings are the chaotic bit and you then go to work, or if it's coming home from work, spend a few minutes either in the car, in the garage, just before you get off the train, whatever the transition is, and sit for it can only be for 10 deep breaths, and just try and notice where you're at right now. if for those who've got an iPhone, and I'm not sponsored by Apple, but there is inbuilt into the Health app a mood tracker. And so you can open up that mood tracker and it just gets you to move like a little button across from pleasant to unpleasant. And then once you sort of move it across, it's got this beautiful thing that changes color and gets a bit stormy and gray if it's unpleasant. And then once you kind of categorize your mood, then the next page gets you to pick the emotion. So if you're actually struggling to label it, you can use one of those visual tools that gets you to kind of name it. And that might be your first step, is actually trying to identify for yourself what it is. So you can start off with figuring out, is it slightly unpleasant or pleasant? And then you can flip to the next page, which is, you might think, I'm feeling slightly unpleasant. And then it's because I'm feeling overwhelmed, stressed, rejected, hurt, frustrated. And then you can keep going through it, and it actually helps you map out your mood over time with different activities that might contribute to your mood. So I would start with naming it yourself. And if that's as much as you can do, then that's a good start. And then you can start to introduce that to the conversation. So start small. And again, remember that self-compassion. It's hard. We're not often role modeled this. Feels like contradictory information about positivity, and you don't want to dwell on things and you don't want to get too anxious. And it's figuring out what's the right thing for you. Sometimes we can overcompensate too far the other way. We are people. We do feel feelings. They tell us something. They're signposting what's important in our life. They're there to signal something, and we need to tune into that a little bit more. And it doesn't mean you need to 180 your whole life, even though sometimes we might need to change some things. There are little bits we can do in the moment to ease some of that and to maintain connection, because I think that's at the base of a lot of this is we need connection with other people. We need our community, our friends, parents, partners, whoever. And some of these skills, these pro-social skills, reaching out, letting people know what you need, setting boundaries, helps maintain that connection while we figure out the stuff that we're going through on our own.
Beautifully said, Marie. Honestly, thank you. Thank you so much. I think it was just meant to be that I was chatting to you today while feeling the way that I'm feeling, and I know that there are so many parents and listening who will be able to take so many pearls of wisdom away. And I really loved in that last kind of answer just the way you said about starting small, and I was having a little look on my iPhone as well, and maybe using a tool, because sometimes it's actually remarkably hard sometimes to sort of pinpoint exactly how we are feeling. Sometimes to be able to use something that can guide us, that can be really powerful. So thank you so much for your time today. I always love talking with you, and for listeners who are keen to connect with you and learn more, where can they find you online? And anyone looking for support with their own mental health and wellbeing or relationships, looking for family therapy or couples therapy, can you give us the web address for the Therapy Hub as well?
Yeah, so it's thetherapyhub.com.au, and my personal brand, so it's under Marie Vakakis, and I'm on LinkedIn, now on TikTok of all places, YouTube, Instagram. And so depending on the content, people can engage in different ways. So there's a few different ways. And just like with your card deck, I'm actually working on a card deck as well for families. So something that families can bring to help have some of these tricky conversations, and then for other family therapists to use as well. So that's in the works as well, which is pretty exciting.
Oh, congratulations. That's brilliant. Oh, well, hit me up if you've got any questions. And it's actually a good reminder for me to share on the podcast that the Anxiety Toolkit for Parents is available on my website. It's a 70-card deck that I designed to support parents and so many teachers are actually making a purchase of the toolkit as well. And the feedback that I'm getting is it's really actually fulfilling, Marie, when you do create something like that and set it out to the world. When people start using it and start telling you the difference it's making, it's really brilliant. So have a look on my website, drjodirichardson.com, and please have a look there, and there's the books in the shop there as well. So good luck with that, Marie, and thank you you work so hard, not only mean, obviously I'm not in the therapy room with you, but I can just imagine the difference you're making in the lives of the people that you're with. And I know you've got such a heart and a dedication for that, but you also really work hard sharing your knowledge and, producing, 2 podcasts and YouTube, TikTok, goodness. Thank you for all that you're doing to really support mental health of the, the wider community. And thank you for sharing some of your time with us. I know how precious your time is, so I'm very grateful.
No, it's always a pleasure. I love having these conversations because there's so much nuance involved. And even who would have thought you could have a couple of 100 episodes just on anxiety, right? But it crosses over everything from work, personal life, parenting, partnering. Like I keep laughing at our Not About the Christmas Ham episode last year because I'm getting ready for what do I talk about coming up to the busy time again this year. So
Yes.
there's so many things and ways that this comes up that we just need to keep talking about, and hopefully someone learns something or learns what not to do if we've shared something that we're doing that hasn't quite worked. And
Yes.
it's just part of the discourse, I think.
I agree. And I think just this permission to be human, just that, no matter what we do, no matter what path we're walking in life, we all face similar challenges. We all experience lots of emotions. A lot of them are really hard. And my hope is that, that through the podcast, it makes it a little bit easier in times, like you say, some ideas about what might help, ideas about what might not work, and also that people aren't alone. And I've always grateful. So I think next conversation I really want to talk to you about partnerships, and I think that would be a good next topic for us. So thanks again, Marie. Have a lovely rest of the day.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing this time with me on Well, Hello Anxiety. Remember, understanding anxiety is the first step to managing it. Until next time, be gentle with yourself. Take things one moment at a time. Focus on what you can control and know that you are not alone on this journey. If you found value in today's episode, please share it with someone who might need to hear it too. I'm Dr. Jodi Richardson, and I'll meet you right back here next week.